The autumn wind howled across Lake Superior as Tom Miller pulled his thick wool coat tighter around his shoulders. At 45 years old, he had seen plenty of storms come and go during his time as the lighthouse keeper, but something about tonight felt different. The air seemed to crackle with an unusual energy that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. From his position atop the lighthouse, Tom could see for miles across the dark waters. The old stone building had been his home for the past 5 years, ever since he had retired from his job as a rescue swimmer. Some people found the solitary life of a lighthouse keeper lonely, but Tom enjoyed the peace and quiet. It gave him time to think, to read, and to watch over the waters he had come to love. Tonight's storm was building up to be a nasty one. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, occasionally lit up by flashes of lightning. The waves crashed against the rocky shore below, sending spray high into the air. Tom checked his watch. 9:45 p.m. Just another couple of hours until his evening rounds were done. As he scanned the horizon with his binoculars, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just lightning, but the light was different, a bright blue-green color that seemed to move in a straight line across the sky. Tom lowered his binoculars and watched with his naked eyes as the strange light grew larger and brighter. What in the world? He muttered to himself, reaching for the more powerful telescope mounted near the lighthouse railing. Before he could focus the lens, the light suddenly changed direction. Instead of moving across the sky, it began to descend rapidly toward the lake. Tom's heart started racing as he watched the object, whatever it was, plummet toward the water's surface. It wasn't like any aircraft he had ever seen before, and in his rescue swimming days, he had seen plenty of aircraft. The object hit the water about half a mile from shore with a tremendous splash that was visible even through the storm. Steam rose from the spot where it had entered the lake, and then something even stranger happened. The dark waters began to glow with an eerie purple light that spread out in a circle from the impact point. Tom's training kicked in. Whatever had just crashed might have people aboard who needed help. He grabbed his emergency kit, a waterproof bag containing first aid supplies, a flashlight, and other rescue gear, and ran down the lighthouse stairs. His legs carried him quickly despite his age, muscle memory from years of rescue work taking over. As he reached the shore, Tom could see the purple glow under the water more clearly now. It pulsed like a heartbeat, growing stronger and then fading slightly before growing strong again. The waves were rough, but not impossible for someone with his experience. He had swum in worse conditions during his career. Then he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Among the waves, illuminated by the strange purple light, he caught glimpses of what looked like writing or symbols floating on the water's surface. They weren't like any language he had ever seen before. They seemed to shift and change shape as he watched. A loud cracking sound echoed across the water, and the purple glow suddenly intensified. Tom shielded his eyes from the brightness, and when he looked again, he saw something that would change his life forever. There, in the midst of the glowing water, a shape was moving. It wasn't the random motion of debris being tossed by waves. This was deliberate movement, like someone swimming. But the shape was all wrong for a human swimmer. Thunder rolled overhead as Tom made his decision. Whatever was out there might need help, and he had sworn an oath years ago to assist anyone in danger on the water. Human or not, he couldn't stand by and watch someone drown. He checked the straps on his emergency kit one last time and looked up at his lighthouse. Its beams swept across the stormy lake, steady and reliable as always. Tom took a deep breath, mentally preparing himself for what he was about to do. The water would be freezing, the waves dangerous, and he had no idea what he would find out there in the glowing purple water. But that had never stopped him before. The icy water hit Tom like 1,000 needles as he dove into Lake Superior. Even with his experience, the cold shocked his system, making him gasp. The waves tossed him up and down, but he kept his eyes fixed on the purple glow ahead. 20 years of rescue swimming had taught him to respect the water, not fear it. Lightning flashed overhead, giving him a better view of what lay ahead. The glowing object was bigger than he had first thought, about the size of a small car. It was sinking fast, leaving a trail of bubbling purple light as it went down. But what caught his attention was the movement nearby, a figure thrashing in the water, giving off a faint purple glow. Tom began swimming with powerful strokes, fighting against the waves. The emergency kit dragged behind him on its long waterproof cord. Every few seconds, he would catch glimpses of the struggling figure. It moved strangely, not like any drowning person he had ever seen before. Its movements were almost graceful, despite the panic. As he got closer, the purple glow grew stronger. Now he could see why the movement looked so odd. The figure wasn't human. It had a humanoid shape, but its skin seemed to shimmer with spots of light, like stars in the night sky. Its arms were longer than a human's, and what looked like fins or membranes stretched between its fingers. For a moment, Tom froze in the water, his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. Then he heard a sound, a high-pitched cry that somehow cut through the storm. It was a sound of pure fear, and in that moment, it didn't matter that the creature wasn't human. Fear sounded the same in any language. "Hold on," Tom shouted, pushing through his shock. "I'm coming." The alien figure, there was no other word for it, turned toward his voice. Its eyes were large and reflected the purple light like mirrors. It reached out toward him with those long, webbed fingers, then suddenly went under. Tom took a deep breath and dove. The purple glow helped him see underwater, though the murky lake tried its best to hide everything in darkness. He spotted the alien about 10 feet below him, sinking fast. Its movements were getting weaker. Whatever it was clearly drowning. He kicked hard, pushing himself deeper. His lungs began to burn, but he ignored it. The alien's eyes were starting to close, its glow fading, just a little further. Tom's hand closed around what felt like a smooth, cool arm. The alien's skin was surprisingly soft, almost like silk underwater. He pulled it close and began kicking toward the surface, his powerful legs fighting against the weight of them both. They broke through the waves together, Tom gasping for air. The alien lay limp in his arms, but he could feel a faint trembling. It was still alive. He pulled the emergency kit closer and grabbed a flotation device, wrapping it around them both. "I've got you," he said, though he wasn't sure if it could understand him. "Just hold on." The storm was getting worse, making the swim back twice as hard. Tom's muscles screamed with effort as he fought the waves, keeping the alien's head above water. Its purple glow had dimmed to almost nothing, which somehow seemed like a bad sign. Lightning split the sky again, showing him the way back to shore. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, guiding them home. Tom's teeth chattered from the cold, but he kept moving. One arm stroke at a time, one kick at a time. The shore seemed impossibly far away, but he had never lost anyone during a rescue, and he wasn't about to start now. Just when his strength was about to give out, his feet touched ground. Tom stood up in the shallow water, his legs shaking with exhaustion. He lifted the alien figure in his arms. It was surprisingly light, and carried it toward the shore. The purple glow had almost disappeared now, but he could feel its chest moving, still breathing. As he stumbled onto the beach, Tom looked down at the face of the being he had just rescued. In the light from his lighthouse, he could finally see it clearly. What he saw made him realize that this night was just the beginning of something much bigger than a simple rescue. Tom carried the alien into his lighthouse, leaving a trail of water behind them. The being in his arms was light, maybe 80 pounds at most, and about the size of a teenage human. Its skin felt cool to the touch, and gave off a faint purple glow that lit up the dark stairwell as they climbed. In the lighthouse's living quarters, Tom gently placed his unusual guest on the couch. In the bright indoor light, he could finally see the alien clearly. Its face was almost human-like, but with larger almond-shaped eyes and small gill-like slits on its neck. The alien's skin had a silvery blue tint, decorated with spots that glowed like tiny stars. Long, fin-like membranes ran down its arms, and its fingers were webbed. "Got to get you warm and dry," Tom muttered, grabbing towels from his bathroom. As he returned, the alien's eyes fluttered open. They were a deep purple color, with no visible pupils. The alien tried to sit up but started coughing violently. Water spilled from its mouth and the gill slits on its neck. Tom quickly helped it lean forward, supporting its shoulders. The coughing fit lasted several minutes before the alien could breathe normally again. "Easy there," Tom said softly, not expecting any response. "You're safe now." To his surprise, the alien reached for something on its wrist, what he had thought was a bracelet. It pressed a few spots on the device, and suddenly the air filled with a soft humming sound. "Thank you for saving my life," said a clear voice that seemed to come from the device. The alien's mouth moved, but the words came through the translator. The voice sounded female, though Tom wasn't sure if that meant anything with aliens. You can understand me?" Tom asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite his amazement. "Yes, my universal translator still works, thankfully." The alien wrapped one of the towels around her shoulders. "I am Lyra, a research scientist from the Aquatic Alliance. I was not supposed to be seen by any humans." Tom sat down in his chair, trying to process everything. "I'm Tom Miller. I couldn't just let you drown out there. Are you hurt anywhere?" Lyra touched the gill slits on her neck. "My breathing system was damaged in the crash. My people can usually breathe both air and water, but right now," she coughed again, "right now I can barely do either." "What happened up there?" Tom asked, glancing toward the window where he had first seen the strange lights. "My research vessel malfunctioned. I was studying Earth's oceans. From a safe distance, of course. We've been observing your planet for centuries, but we're not supposed to make contact." She looked down at her webbed hands. "I've broken our most important rule." Tom leaned forward. "You've been watching us all this time?" "Yes, Earth is unique in our known galaxy. The variety of life here, the way different species interact, and especially humans." Lyra's large eyes focused on Tom. "You're fascinating to us. Your ability to survive in so many environments. Your adaptability. She paused, seeming to search for the right words through her translator. "Your courage." "Courage?" Tom asked. "You jumped into freezing water during a storm to save someone you didn't even know wasn't human." Lyra's spots glowed brighter. "Most species we've encountered would never take such a risk for a stranger." Before Tom could respond, a low rumbling sound filled the air. The lighthouse windows rattled slightly. Lyra's spots pulsed with what looked like relief. "That would be my people," she said. "They've received my distress signal. They'll be here soon." She looked at Tom with concern. "I don't know what they'll do about this situation. No human was ever supposed to know about us, but you saved my life." Tom stood up and walked to the window. Through the storm clouds, he could see lights much bigger than the one he'd spotted earlier. Something massive was descending from the sky. "Well," he said, trying to sound calmer than he felt, "I guess we're about to find out." The massive ship broke through the storm clouds like a small city descending from heaven. Its surface gleamed with the same purple lights Tom had seen on Lyra's crashed vessel, but on a much larger scale. The storm seemed to calm around it, as if even nature was in awe of its presence. "That's quite a rescue party," Tom said, trying to keep his voice steady. The ship was easily the size of 10 football fields, hovering silently above Lake Superior. Lyra stood beside him at the lighthouse window, her spots glowing brighter now. "That's the Starwaver, my father's command ship." She turned to Tom, her large purple eyes serious. "He's the admiral of our research fleet, and he's not going to be happy about any of this." Before Tom could respond, a beam of light shot down from the massive ship, touching the water's surface near the lighthouse. The beam widened, and within it, shapes began to appear. 3 tall figures materialized on the shore, their forms becoming solid as the light faded. "They're coming up," Lyra said, watching as the 3 figures started climbing the path to the lighthouse. "Tom, let me do the talking at first, please." Tom nodded, his heart pounding. The figures reached his door, and instead of knocking, the door simply slid open on its own. 3 aliens entered, each at least 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in the same glowing spots as Lyra, but arranged in different patterns. They wore what looked like flowing robes made of something that shifted colors like oil on water. The one in front was clearly in charge. His spots glowed with a fierce intensity, and the fins along his arms were larger, marked with complex patterns. He looked at Lyra and made a series of musical sounds that Tom's ears could barely process. Lyra responded in the same language, then touched her wrist device. "Please, Father," in English, for our host's benefit. "He saved my life." The Admiral's large eyes turned to Tom, studying him with an intensity that made Tom want to step back. Instead, he stood his ground. Years of facing deadly storms had taught him that showing fear rarely helped any situation. "You are the human who rescued my daughter." The Admiral's translator device spoke in a deep, resonant voice. "Yes, sir," Tom replied, keeping his voice respectful but firm. "I'm Tom Miller. I saw her ship crash and did what anyone would do." "But that's just it, Father," Lyra interrupted. "Not anyone would do it. He jumped into freezing water during a storm without knowing what he was saving. This is exactly what I've been trying to tell you about humans." The Admiral raised a hand for silence, still studying Tom. "Your species has been a subject of much debate in our council, Mr. Miller. Some see your potential, while others see only your violent history. My daughter has been one of your strongest advocates in our scientific community." Tom glanced at Lyra, who was practically glowing with excitement now. The 2 other aliens had moved to examine his lighthouse equipment with curious gestures. "Tell me," the Admiral continued, "why did you risk your life for someone you didn't know? Someone who wasn't even human?" Tom thought for a moment, then answered honestly. "Sir, I used to be a rescue swimmer. When someone's drowning, you don't stop to ask questions about who they are. You just help. That's what humans do, or at least, what we try to do." The Admiral made a sound that Tom's translator didn't catch, but Lyra's spots pulsed with what looked like joy. The Admiral turned to her and spoke in their language again, their musical tones rising and falling quickly. Lyra turned to Tom, her eyes shining. "Father says your actions tonight may have just changed everything. The Council has been watching Earth, waiting for proof that humans are ready for contact. They needed evidence that humans could act with courage and compassion beyond their own species." The Admiral faced Tom again. "Mr. Miller, what you did tonight wasn't just a rescue. You may have just opened the door to the greatest opportunity your species has ever known." Tom looked between them, at the massive ship hovering outside, and at the storm that was finally beginning to clear. Somehow, he knew his quiet life as a lighthouse keeper was about to become much more interesting. Tom sat in his lighthouse kitchen, watching as his strange visitors examined a simple cup of coffee with intense curiosity. The Admiral, who had told Tom to call him Reed for simplicity's sake, held the cup up to his face scanning devices, while Lyra's spots pulsed with excitement at each new discovery. "Fascinating," Reed said through his translator. "You humans consume this stimulant regularly, yet your bodies have adapted to process it safely. This is exactly what makes your species unique." "It's just coffee," Tom said, still trying to wrap his head around the fact that he was having a casual conversation with alien visitors. "Though I admit, I probably drink too much of it." "You don't understand," Lyra said, her eyes bright. "Everything about humans is extraordinary to us. Your ability to live in so many different environments, to eat such a variety of foods, to adapt to new situations so quickly." She paused, looking at her father. "Should we show him?" Reed nodded, and one of the other aliens stepped forward, producing what looked like a small glass ball. When he set it on the kitchen table, It projected a hologram showing various scenes from human history. "We've been watching Earth for over 500 years," Reed explained. "We've seen your people overcome countless challenges. Where other species would have failed, humans found a way to survive and thrive." The hologram showed scenes of human achievements: the first flight at Kitty Hawk, the moon landing, deep sea exploration, people surviving in deserts and Arctic conditions. "But it's not just your physical adaptability that interests us," Lyra added. "It's your decision-making speed, your ability to act on instinct while still making moral choices, like jumping into a stormy lake to save a stranger." Tom asked, beginning to understand. "Exactly." Lyra's spots flashed brightly. "Our species has superior technology, yes. We can breathe underwater, travel through space, and translate any language. But we lack something humans have in abundance." Reed set down his coffee cup. "We take hours to analyze simple decisions. Our species evolved to consider every possible outcome before acting. It's made us excellent scientists and engineers, but poor emergency responders." The hologram changed to show various crisis situations where humans had rushed to help others. Firefighters running into burning buildings, people forming human chains to rescue others from floods, strangers pushing stranded cars out of snowdrifts. "This is why we've been watching," Reed continued. "We needed to be sure humans could handle the responsibility of joining the galactic community. We needed proof that your quick decisions would be guided by compassion, not just survival instinct." Tom watched the images float above his kitchen table. "So my rescue of Lyra was the perfect test case," Reed finished. "An emergency situation involving a clearly non-human life form. You had no way of knowing if I was dangerous, yet you acted to save me anyway," Lyra added. The third alien, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward and spoke through their translator. "Our scientists have been divided about humans. Some saw only your wars and conflicts. Others, like Lyra, saw your potential. Tonight's events have settled the debate." Reed stood up, his tall form nearly touching the lighthouse kitchen ceiling. "Humanity has something the galaxy desperately needs. Your combination of quick thinking and moral courage is unique among all the species we've encountered. We have the technology," Lyra explained, "but we need humans' ability to make split-second decisions in emergencies, to act quickly while still doing the right thing." Tom looked at each of them in turn. "So what happens now?" Reed's spots pulsed with what Tom was beginning to recognize as approval. "Now, Mr. Miller, we offer you a choice, one that will affect not just your future, but potentially the future of both our species." The hologram shifted one final time, showing a vast space station orbiting a beautiful blue-green planet. "This is where our species first met others from across the galaxy. And this," Reed said with what sounded like pride in his translated voice, "is where humanity might take its first steps into a much larger universe." Tom looked out his lighthouse window at the massive ship still hovering over Lake Superior, then back at his otherworldly guests. He had a feeling the next part of this conversation would change everything. "We want you to be Earth's first ambassador to the Aquatic Alliance," Reed announced, his translator making the words echo in Tom's small lighthouse kitchen. "Your actions tonight have proven you represent the best qualities of humanity." Tom nearly choked on his coffee. "Me? An ambassador? But I'm just a lighthouse keeper." "Before that, you were a rescue swimmer," Lyra reminded him, her spots glowing softly. "You spent 20 years saving lives without asking questions about who deserved to be saved. That's exactly what we need." The hologram on the table changed again, showing various alien species working together on what looked like rescue missions across space. Some creatures were huge and reptilian, others small and delicate, but all wore the same purple-marked uniforms. "Our alliance handles emergencies across thousands of worlds," Reed explained. "We have the technology and resources, but we lack humanity's gift for quick, compassionate action. We need humans to teach us how to trust our instincts while keeping our moral compass." Tom stood up and walked to his lighthouse window. The massive ship outside seemed to shine brighter in the clearing sky, like a new star hovering over Lake Superior. Below, the waves continued their endless dance against the shore, just as they had every night for the past 5 years. "What exactly would I be doing?" he asked, turning back to face them. "You would live aboard the Starweaver," Lyra said excitedly. "We would train you in our technology, and you would help train our emergency response teams. You'd be a bridge between our worlds." "And Earth?" Tom asked. "Would I ever come back?" "Of course," Reed answered. "In fact, part of your role would be helping us prepare humanity for official first contact. We need someone who understands both worlds." The third alien stepped forward again. "We should mention the physical modifications required. Nothing major, just improvements to help you survive in space and underwater. You would keep your human abilities while gaining some of ours." Tom looked down at his hands, remembering how they had gripped Lyra in the stormy water just hours ago. "Would I still be me?" Lyra moved closer to him, her large purple eyes serious. "You would still be human, Tom. That's the whole point. We don't want to change what humans are. We want to learn from you." "Can I think about it?" Tom asked. Reed's spots pulsed with what Tom now recognized as approval. "Of course, but we must know by sunrise. If you decline, we will have to erase your memory of this night. Our protocols are strict about unauthorized contact." Tom nodded and walked up to the lighthouse tower, needing some space to think. The others respectfully stayed below. In the tower, he looked out over the lake he had protected for 5 years. The beam of light swept across the water, guiding ships to safety just as it had for over a century. His whole life had been about helping others, first as a rescue swimmer, then as a lighthouse keeper. But this was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Could he really leave everything behind? His quiet life, his lighthouse, his world. But then he thought about what he could do out there. How many lives he might save. How he could help humanity take its first steps into a larger universe. Wasn't this just a bigger version of what he had always done? He remembered the feeling of jumping into the lake without hesitation when he saw someone in trouble. That instant decision to help, regardless of the risk. Maybe that's what humanity had to offer the galaxy. The courage to take that leap. Tom walked back down to the kitchen where the aliens waited patiently. Lyra's spots pulsed with anticipation, and even Reed seemed tense. "I have some conditions," Tom said firmly. Reed's translator crackled. "Name them." "I want to keep my lighthouse, not to live in, but to maintain. It's important to me." Tom took a deep breath. "And I want to be honest with the public when first contact happens. No covering up or lying. Humanity deserves the truth." Reed and the other aliens exchanged looks, their spots flickering in what seemed like a silent conversation. Finally, Reed turned back to Tom. "Your terms are acceptable," he said. "Does this mean?" Tom smiled, feeling the same certainty he had felt when diving into the stormy lake. "Yes, I accept." The sunrise over Lake Superior painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tom stood on the lighthouse balcony one last time, a small bag of personal belongings at his feet. He had spent the last hour writing a letter to the Coast Guard, explaining his departure in the vaguest terms possible. "Someone else will keep the light burning," he whispered to the old lighthouse. For 5 years, it had been his home, his purpose. Now it would become his anchor to Earth, a reminder of where he came from. Below, Lyra waited on the shore, her spots glowing softly in the morning light. The massive Starweaver hovered silently above them, its purple lights dimmed to avoid attention from nearby towns. The other aliens had returned to the ship hours ago, giving Tom time to pack and say goodbye. He took one last look around his living quarters. On the kitchen table, he left his resignation letter and lighthouse keys, along with a simple note, "Gone to help others. The light will always guide me home. Are you ready?" Lyra asked as he walked down to the shore. Her translator made her voice sound gentler than usual. "As ready as I'll ever be," Tom replied, looking up at the massive ship, Still can't believe this is happening. A beam of light appeared from the ship, similar to the one that had brought Reeve and his team down the night before. This time, though, it was meant to take Tom up. "Just one thing before we go," Lyra said, pulling out a small purple device. "Your first gift from the Alliance." She attached it to Tom's wrist. It looked like a simple bracelet, but felt warm against his skin. "What is it?" he asked. "A universal translator, like mine. But this one also helps you breathe underwater." Her spots pulsed with what he now knew was happiness. "Father says your training starts tomorrow, and swimming is part of it." Tom smiled, touching the device. Just 12 hours ago, he had been a simple lighthouse keeper. Now he wore alien technology and was about to board a spaceship. Life was strange sometimes. The light beam enveloped them both. Tom felt a slight tingling sensation, and suddenly his feet left the ground. They floated upward, Lake Superior growing smaller below them. He could see his lighthouse getting tinier, its beams still sweeping faithfully across the water. As they ascended, Lyra spoke softly. "You know, there's an old saying among my people. The bravest dive is the one made for others." We never understood why humans seem to live that truth so naturally. They passed through an opening in the massive ship's hull, and Tom's feet touched solid ground again. He found himself in a vast chamber filled with technology he couldn't begin to understand. Alien crew members moved about their duties, some nodding respectfully as they passed. Reed waited for them, his tall form standing before what looked like a window into space. "Welcome aboard the Starwaver, Ambassador Miller." "Just Tom, please," he said, walking to the window. Earth hung below them like a blue jewel in the darkness. From up here, he could see the entire Great Lakes system, his lighthouse now invisible in the vastness. "Your training begins tomorrow," Reed said. "But today, we have a tradition for new crew members. Would you like to see your first sunrise from space?" Tom nodded, unable to speak as the ship moved into position. Slowly, the sun emerged from behind Earth's curve, lighting up the planet in a way he had only seen in photographs. It was the same sun that had risen over his lighthouse countless times, but now he saw it differently, as just one light among many in a vast universe of possibilities. "You know," Tom said finally, "lighthouses don't just warn about dangers. They also guide ships to new harbors, new opportunities." He touched the translator on his wrist. "Maybe that's what I'll be doing here, helping humanity find its way to something bigger." Lyra's spots glowed in agreement, and even Reed's usually formal demeanor softened. As the sun fully emerged, bathing them all in its light, Tom knew he had made the right choice. He might not be keeping his lighthouse anymore, but he was still doing what he had always done, helping others find their way through the dark. The adventure was just beginning.